أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الرحمن علم القرآن خلق الإنسان علمه البيان الشمس والقمر بحسبان والنجم والشجر يسجدان والسماء رفعها ووضع الميزان ألا تطغوا في الميزان وأقيموا الوزن بالقسط ولا تخسروا الميزان والأرض وضعها للأنام فيها فاكهة والنخل ذات الأكمام والحب ذو العصف والريحان فبأي آلاء ربكما تكذبان خلق الإنسان من صلصال كالفخار وخلق الجان من مارج من نار فبأي آلاء ربكما تكذبان رب المشرقين ورب المغربين فبأي آلاء ربكما تكذبان مرج البحرين يلتقيان بينهما برزخ لا يبغيان فبأي آلاء ربكما تكذبان يخرج منهما اللؤلؤ والمرجان فبأي آلاء ربكما تكذبان وله الجوار المنشآت في البحر كالأعلام فبأي آلاء ربكما تكذبان كل من عليها فان كل من عليها فان ويبقى وجه ربك ذو الجلال والإكرام فبأي آلاء ربكما تكذبان يسأله من في السماوات والأرض كل يوم هو في شأن فبأي آلاء ربكما تكذبان صدق الله العظيم.
In the name of God, most gracious, most merciful. the most merciful, taught the Quran, created man, and taught him eloquence. The sun and the moon move by precise calculation, and the stars and trees prostrate. And the heaven he raised and imposed the balance, that you transgress within the balance, and establish weight in justice, and do not make deficient the balance. And the earth he laid out for the creatures, therein is fruit, and palm trees having sheaths of dates, and grain having husks and scented plants. So which of the favours of your Lord would you deny? He created man from clay like that of pottery, and he created the jinn from a smokeless flame of fire. So which of the favours of your Lord would you deny? He is Lord of the two sunrises and Lord of the two sunsets. So which of the favours of your Lord would you deny? He released the two seas, meeting side by side. Between them is a barrier, so neither of them transgress. So which of the favours of your Lord would you deny? From both of them emerge pearl and coral, so which of the favours of your Lord would you deny? And to him belong the ships with sails, elevated in the sea like mountains. So which of the favours of your Lord would you deny? Everyone upon it, i.e. the earth, will perish. And there will remain the face of your Lord, owner of majesty and honour. So which of the favours of your Lord would you deny? Whoever is within the heavens and earth asks him every day he is in a matter. So which of the favours of your Lord would you deny? Tonight's talk is how Islam contributed to modern science. Tonight we have 4 speakers: Subhi Al-Azawi, Dr. Salim Aiduz, Dr. Zohor Idrisi, and Dr. Salahuddin Al-Jazari. Tonight's moderator will be Professor Adil Sharif, who is a founder director of the Centre of Osmosis Research and Applications at the Faculty of Engineering and Physical Sciences, University of Surrey. Professor Sharif is the winner of the Royal Society 2005 Brian Mercer Senior Award for Innovations in Science and Technology. He joined Surrey University here in 1998 as a lecturer after spending 6 years in Swansea University between 1992 and 1998. As a senior researcher fellow, he was promoted to reader in 2001 and to a professor in 2007. Professor Sharif founded CORA in 2003, the UN Year of Fresh Water. The Centre's research activities in the area of osmosis science have resulted in a number of inventions in the areas of desalination, water treatment, and renewable energy. These inventions have the capacity to significantly change the economic and performance characteristics of industries such as desalination, water treatment, power generation, oil, chemical, and energy industries that use or produce large quantities of dilute solutions. Professor Sharif is the founder director of Surrey Aqua Technology Limited, a University of Surrey spin-out company formed to commercialise the IP and research outputs of CORA. Surrey Aqua Technology was merged with Modern Water plc, and the new entity was floated on the London AIM market in June 2007, creating a market value of £70 million. If we'd like to give a warm welcome to our moderator for this evening, Professor Adil Sharif.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. I'm absolutely delighted and honored to giving the opportunity to contribute to this tonight event, and also to be part of activity which is very close to my heart, and it is the contribution of Islam to modern science. And before I introduce my distinguished speakers for this evening, I'd just like to say a few words about the scientific developments we have today, which probably may be little known, maybe to Muslim or non-Muslims, that is all started during Islamic time in a city called Kufa in the middle of Iraq. The algebra, the algorithm, which is the inventor was Al-Khwarizmi, and medicine, or the pioneer of medicine, Ibn Sina. But as we understand knowledge in its traditional form, it's incremental, those step changes of algebra or the invention of the zero, which had so much impact today on our life, without which we wouldn't really see information technology or the computer technology in the way it is now. What brought about those step changes? And I was actually at the palace last week, meeting the Duke, the Queen and the Duke of Kent asked me the question. He said, what made them to come up with algebra? And what was the motivation? Was there anybody before them who knew about it? And this is what we talk about, faith-inspired ideas or activities. So one of the fundamental aspects of faith is inspiration. And in our sort of knowledge, we learn about knowledge in the conventional way by reading. But how new knowledge came about is inspiration. It's our imagination. And what inspires this imagination is faith. And interestingly, 25 minutes later, the Duke of Kent came back to me and he said, you must be right. It must come from their heads. Because there was no other reference to algebra or to zero before those Islamic scientists. But it was the faith which inspired them, and the societal requirements which inspired them to find the solutions. And just on the positive side, to look at the future, if you're going to look for solutions that address the world needs, whether it's in water, whether it's in energy, whether it's in health, whether it's in any aspect of life, to enjoy the quality of life we're having, it must come from faith-inspired ideas. It gives me great pleasure and honor to introduce Dr. Zohor Idrisi. Dr. Zohor is a research fellow of the Foundation of Science, Technology and Civilization and member of the Muslim Heritage Awareness Group, the consulting body instituted by FSTC. I hope I speak around. Yes, please. If you welcome her to the
The Islamic innovation in agro-science and food technology. In order to understand the changes brought about by the advance of Islam, they need to be seen against the backcloth of what existed before the 7th century, on a political, educational, and commercial level. First, we have a look at the political chaos before the advent of Islam. So the political instability that arose after the fall of the Roman Empire led to, if you could help yourself by reading what is on the wall. And this is what was the known world, the Byzantine, India, Europe, all in a very, very degrading state. Thus, when Islam began to move upwards, it encountered a virtual power vacuum that facilitated its conquest, so that within a mere 100 years, the Muslims were in control of an area stretching from the Pyrenees to China. The Muslims could have conducted themselves like many invaders before them, looted valuables, wasted the contents of storehouses until the approach of famine, and then leaving. However, the incentive of leaders have changed from the promise of booty to the promise of land for two main reasons. First, Islam invests in the prosperity and welfare of man. In order to achieve the above, a permanent and sound economy was needed to feed the population. And since the feudal system did not form part of their agenda, the Muslims had a more enlightened attitude to their own, which is free enterprise and land reform. Thus, for the first time in history, virtually all cultivated land was owned by individuals with the right to sell it, rent it, or whip it, and farm it, or have it farmed. Those who worked the land were entitled to a share in the benefit created thereby, for which formal contracts were agreed. Both the states and merchants invested in research in all fields. So we selected few technology Agriculture received a special attention. It moved from supporting a basic survival regime to the creation of a development lifestyle. In other words, what was rare and only for the rich became available to the layman. Hence, new plants were introduced, some of which were very thirsty as they came from a different environment. So we look at agricultural technology. Transplanting exotic plants, the study of the soils, the graphic technology, water management was all on their agenda. So the new plants, the continued success of acclimatization projects resulted in a wide range of new plants becoming established between the 8th and the 10th century. Therefore, we see some of the ingredients here introduced for the first time outside their environment. So engineers were brought to build dams, canals, reservoirs, and underground conduits for irrigation. One such project used 200 workers for 30 years, which is bringing the melted snow from the mountain to the town, and that is in Marrakesh. It took 30 years, 200 men to finish the work, and similar projects were in Iran. So one of the machines they developed was the lawyer, and you could see how big it is compared to the two individuals standing in front of it. This machine was used to bring water to the fields with rice, cotton, sugar, and for instance, we know that in Spain, just one area had 8,000 norias. Here, the technology of the noria, the big wheel, was still used in Europe in the 17th century, when King Louis XIV used it to bring water to his chateau in Versailles, and he used 14 wheels to bring water. After the water technology, we see that fertilization was a must. Gathering fertilizers, organic manure to fortify the land, was found in the pigeon droppings. Pigeon houses were scattered all over the Muslim world and wherever agriculture was developed. Thus, by far, the most significant contribution to agro-science by the Muslims was the transplantation and acclimatization of plants in areas where they had never been grown before. Nature was challenged both in Africa and Europe. This involved, in addition to water management, intense soil studies, research into organic fertilizers, and a wide study of grafting techniques. Silk, for instance, was not easily found in Europe, as the Romans didn't know where it came from. It was a secret kept by the Chinese, and whoever went to buy silk in China never knew where it came from or what is it made of. In the 9th century, the 4,000 miles across China was reduced to 300 miles from Rome to Sicily. So some of the more economically significant introductions were the sugar, previously imported only by the Roman aristocracy, but unknown to the public, was successfully harvested in both Italy and Spain and became a staple food. Rice, again a luxury, it was quickly established by enhancing the water supply in Sicily and Spain. Cotton, a luxury import for the rich, now became available to the general public. It was grown in Africa, Spain, and Italy. Silk, that took 3 years to reach Europe from China, was established as an industry in southern Europe by planting the mulberry trees on which the silkworms could feed. Indigo, for dyes, was planted in sub-Saharan Africa, giving an economic boost to the local population, in addition to cotton, bananas, mangoes, saffron, ginger, cassava, and roses, etc. Bananas, by the way, is an Arabic word meaning finger. The original name for banana is moose, which is a Sanskrit word, and the Muslims used to call it banana moose, which is finger of the banana. The 13, here we see a sugar factory from Morocco, and we see how the water was channeled from the mountains down to where the factories were, and apparently there were more than 16 factories just for the area of Morocco. And the orange part, these is where the machines were. One bringing water, channeled water to the wheel to crush the. We're talking about sugar wheat here, sugar cane, not the sugar beet, the beet sugar that came in the 17th century. So the other two machines were crushing the surplus of the sugar cane and channeling it to a system where the sugar was boiled and after that shaped. The other element is hard wheat. No hard wheat, no pasta. Hard wheat could only be, pasta could only be made from hard wheat, which is more malleable and you can shape it in different shapes, whereas the Chinese pasta or noodles is only in one shape, which is the elongated one, and it comes from rice by battering the dough of rice. And you couldn't have any shape at all from rice. So that was introduced by the Muslims into Italy and Spain in the 10th century. Silk, where the Roman used to go as far as China to get it, it's made in Italy. This is the mantle with Arabic inscription at the bottom. And this cape, or the mantle, was worn in the 12th century by Roger II and the Holy Roman Emperor. So the colours and the dyes were all herbs and plants brought by the Muslims for their weaving factories in Italy. The glass industry, there was no glass blowing technique in Europe or elsewhere. And the Roman, they had a very basic knowledge of glass. But from the 8th century, the Muslims started to drinking glasses in different colors, shapes, and we have several poets writing about the glass. One of them is Rumi, one who's wondering what is in the glass and how is he holding the glass. Whereas France had to wait until 1764 to have individual glasses. And before that, when the European aristocracy had glasses, they had a special person carrying the glass for them. And it was very, very difficult to get glasses. This is the beauty of the glass industry, where not only glass was blown, but also they had the color and the luster and the writing, which was difficult to achieve before. As the chemistry was developing, they had a variety of colors added, including gold and silver. Here, that's the paper mill. Again, the noria was used to give power to working machinery, and the introduction of paper helped the spreading of knowledge and made the recording of scientific information available throughout the known world. This is how the machine, the noria outside, was making the maggots, hammering the pulp. Again, the pulp. And here we have a mallet going in 3 cadences with a trough churning the pulp. And also they had it in different colors, and they had it perfumed as well for a special event. Sugar. Sugar became an industry in its own right, propelled by the demand for jams, cakes, syrups, nougat, and other sweets. Here, making crystallized jelly. And at times, these are considered as medicine, as special herbs or oils were added to them. So it wasn't only for entertainment, but it was for medicine as well. This is the medicated pastils, how the sugar was, or the syrup was, the medicated syrup was melted and put into these shapes. So in pre-Islamic times, the method of obtaining essences and perfumes were at best only basic. For plants, as Muslim doctors were, and the chemists were bringing more plants and finding out more about medicine, we consider here what was the plant situation in ancient Egypt, where the plant was macerated and squeezed in jars. This is the Greek and the Roman time. It's not different from the previous, which is always squeezing the herbs. But the Muslims have discovered distillation in the 11th century. And that brought a new dimension to chemical medicine and gave the oil in a pure form without plant residue. So the distillation by Islamic made it possible to extract essential oils from plants by distillation, and they discovered that the properties of plants are concentrated in their oils, and they were analgesic, anti-inflammatory, tonic, antibacterial, antifungal, etc. Subsequent studies of the therapeutic properties of plants gave birth to medical chemistry, and for the first time we had people studying chemistry as a subject, as an academic subject. So the medical chemistry in the form of syrups, pastilles, gums, cordials, alcohol, and fragrances. Out of 3,000 known aromatic oils, 300 are used to this day in the agroalimentary industry because of their antioxidant qualities. Here we have herbal distillation, which is on the industrial scale. The agricultural sorry, I have to go to my last page.
Probably.
Just one after this.
Maybe it's hidden. Yeah, maybe the last slide is hidden.
Can I deal with it? Oh yeah, okay. So
yeah,
that's it, leave it there, yes. That's the one, yes.
No, leave it in the edit form.
Okay.
Just leave it in the edit form because it's yeah.
So here we see how the production for last year, it's still the same product, the same crops, and the world now is fighting for the same product on an international scale. These are the sugar, the banana, the prunes, and everything in millions of tons. The conclusion gives us an idea on the progress done by the Muslims and their endeavor of going to this extent to produce what we have inherited today. Shukran.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Dr. Zohor, for the very, very interesting talk. And I forgot to mention, because I immediately looked to the second paragraph of your introductory notes. Dr. Zohor Idrisi obtained a PhD from the University of London. She's also a historian and an author, as well as a research fellow at the Foundation of Science, Technology and Civilization. Give me great pleasure to introduce our second speaker for tonight is Dr. Salahuddin. Dr. Salahuddin has lectured and researched at the University of Constantine, Algeria, for more than 10 years. He also tutored the Department of Geography of the University of Manchester. More recently, he has worked as a research assistant at UMass Manchester in the field of history of science. He has published many academic works and journal articles on environmental degradation, desertifications, as well as papers on politics and the change in North Africa. Without further ado, I'd like to introduce our second speaker, Dr. Salahuddin. Thank you.
Assalamu alaikum and welcome. The micro thing, where is it? The thing. This one here. Ah.
Try, can you hear the back?
Barakallah, thank you. You can hear me?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. And then let's see whether this thing works here. That's fine. Anyway, as you read, I think I'm not going to read for you. If you see to the left and to the right here, this is what I'm talking about mainly, is the state of knowledge about Islamic science civilization. When I started dealing with the subject myself a long time ago, I used to come across statements like these by various historians. So when I started writing about the neglect of Islamic science and history, how it is not known by Muslims themselves, let alone by non-Muslims. Most Muslims don't know about what the Muslims have accomplished. So we shouldn't blame the non-Muslims if they don't know. But here we have an example of historians, Western historians, who do acknowledge. So you see from reading here, and I could have gone on, I could have given you pages about these. Every field, from what you can read here, whatever Muslims have accomplished in history has been neglected. It is not known to this very minute. And as I repeat, by Muslims and non-Muslims everywhere. Now, some historians have obviously done bits in their fields. If we looked here, for instance, Norman Smith, he devoted a chapter to Muslims, what they accomplished in civil engineering, but we don't find it in other books. The same with, say, Harley Woodward, the final paragraph here. And if you go into arts, architecture, you find the same. But nobody has tried to show what has Muslim civilization accomplished and what it has given to humanity. In fact, what we know today is mainly that the Greeks created science, and Muslims translated it into Arabic, and then the West took it from Arabic into Latin. This is what it is. This is the main explanation. However, when we look at the rise of modern science and civilization, when you study not just these authors, because the facts are available, what you have to do, you have to go and look for them and put them together. And this is what we, Muslims in particular, are missing. We don't have researchers. We don't have capable people who just go and stick with the library and spend 10 years or something, fishing here and left and so on, with patience and so on. We have brilliant people. But patience, unfortunately, is what is needed for research. This is what we don't have. So, by putting, if you try to go into the facts of history of science and civilization, you come across the following conclusions. First of all, any place that came across civilization, especially in the West, here we are talking in the West, and why in the West, I would like to go what Sister Zohor said earlier on. At the time when Islam and Islamic civilization were rising, the West was going through the Dark Ages. However, the West started its rise into scientific progress sometimes in the Middle Ages. So how did it happen? This is what we are going to talk about briefly here. I'm not going to be too long. But here I need this map here to show you. This was the Western Empire when Muslim civilization was growing And it was going through what is known in Western history as the Dark Ages, without hardly any science and so on. Here was Byzantium, more or less to the east, and it had some prosperity. But the Muslim world, from the frontiers of China to Al-Andalus, was the most powerful civilization, whether in terms of economics, sciences, culture, learning, universities, book production, and also military power. And at the time, the Muslims were more, like you could say, the West today. Any Westerner who wanted to know anything about anything had to go to the Muslim world. And the first Westerner who visited the Muslim world came from somewhere here, between France and Germany. And it was an ambassador, John of Gauls. He was sent by the emperor. And this John of Gauls was a man who liked sciences, and he traveled to Cordoba, here in Spain. And from here, he took manuscripts of astronomy, because he loved astronomy. And he took them back here. And precisely in that place, you had the first schools in the West. The first schools in the West where science was cultivated was here in a place called Lorraine today, Lotharingia at the time, which is here towards the eastern sides of France and a bit of Germany there. And that was the first place in the West to emerge from barbarism and to have scientific knowledge. And soon after, this place started exporting its scholars everywhere. English kings, whenever they imported scientists, they imported them from here. The French, everybody. So the first study of astronomy and discovery of astronomy and measurements and so on, knowledge about the planets started here in the West. It's again after the visit to Spain, Cordoba. Now, the next place to witness another rising in science in the West was here, Reims. And what happened here? There was somebody called Gerbert, and he became Pope Sylvester II. It was from here, he traveled to Spain again, because here was the learning, and he went back. He was interested in mathematics. And by some coincidence, this place here thrived in mathematical knowledge. And this is the first time when the numericals, 1, 2, 3, the ones we use today, not this, these are the Arabic numerals, the numerals we use today. These are the Arabic numerals. They were introduced by these here, for instance. These are the numerals. The other numerals that the Arabs use today are Hindu numerals. They are not Arabic. These are the Arabic numerals. So it was this man here who introduced them for the first in Europe, the first time in Europe, from Spain, because these numerals were invented, historians are not sure, somewhere either in Fez, in Morocco, or somewhere here in Spain. Here, it hasn't been decided yet. But their origin is from somewhere here. These numerals there, the signs that you see here. The others come from the east. Now, this man, this future Pope Sylvester, was the first one to introduce numerals, to make calculations with numerals. He was so good, he was accused of being a sorcerer, a magician. They said when he traveled to Spain, he made contacts with the Muslims, he passed contracts with them, and so even if he became a pope, they didn't trust him. So he died poisoned because he was accused of having passed the contract with the devil. There is somebody called Allen, an English scholar, who wrote about this story. If you are interested, I can tell you more about it later on. But it's a full story. It's a very interesting one. Anyway. And from here, mathematical knowledge spread to various places and the first schools, because what he did as well, not only he introduced mathematical knowledge, he was inspired by what he saw in Spain. He set up the first schools in Europe, in France. Now, these schools later on were the schools that gave us, or that gave the West, the first scholars in the West. They all started from here, Reims, Chartres, and so on, places around here. The third place to witness another scientific revival is a place here south of Rome called Salerno. And this place called Salerno grew in medical studies. How did it happen? Again, there was another contact with the Muslim world, this time with Tunisia, Al-Qayrawan. Al-Qayrawan at the time was the capital of medical learning. The best doctors in the world were here, in Al-Qayrawan. Most famous amongst them was somebody called Ibn al-Jazzar. His books were really very popular for centuries. What happened, there was somebody called Constantine the African. People say maybe he was Muslim. Some people say he could have been Muslim, then converted to Christian. His history is a bit dubious. But anyway, he was traveling here. Some people say he drowned. Some people say he was attacked by pirates. Anyway, he was caught here. Here is Salerno. And I thought it should be further north, but anyway. And he was taken here to Salerno, and he had with him tens of books that he had brought with him from Al-Qayrawan, because he himself was Tunisian. And he was established here in Salerno, and under the patronage of an archbishop, he began translating from Arabic into Latin. And as soon as Constantine finished his translations, Salerno developed into the most advanced medical faculty in the West at the time, and it became the first university in the West. All future universities in the West were an offspring of Salerno. All of them. At the time, there was no Cambridge or Oxford. The oldest English university was Salerno, was the mother of all universities. It's called the mother of all universities. It's from Salerno that you had Montpellier here, Bologna here, and then Montpellier gave birth to Paris, and then the English came here and studied in Montpellier and in Salerno, and then they set up the English universities and so on and so forth. It's, if you want, one day we can talk more how it happened. Just summing up things for you. So here is another case. Now, you take another place that also thrived in sciences, it's the south of France. And what happened in the south of France? In the south of France, there was a strong Jewish population who had links here with Spain. And it was they who carried learning from Spain to the south of France. And again, you find the names. Because at the time, the Jews studied in Arabic. They knew Arabic and Latin. And they were the link between the Muslims and the West. So all this region here was the most advanced scientifically in France and in other parts, especially medical learning, and again it was following contacts here. Now, so you see whenever you study the history of science in Europe, you find that all regions, anyone, you can pick anything. I could go on through it, but I'm talking about the earlier ones, grew up scientifically as soon as contact was made with the Muslim world. Now, if we take another element, set aside the regional side, if we take time, when did each part of Europe grow scientifically? You find that each part of Europe grew up scientifically or developed scientifically precisely at the time they made contact with Islam. Here, Sicily, there used to be Muslim because the Tunisians had brought it into Islamic fold some centuries before. If you take Sicily, every scientific development that the Muslims initiated in Sicily grew up or developed or spread to Europe as soon as Europeans made contact with Muslim Sicily. Take an example. You look to that, the exchequer, the financial system in the UK. George Osborne was talking today. The idea, when you look through history, it came from Sicily when the Normans came here, because Sicily was taken from the Muslims by the Normans. Also, you see the cousins here. These were Normans and these were Normans in England. They were cousins. So when the English Normans wanted to know something, they came to Norman Sicily and took it back. One of the people they took from here was somebody called Caid Brown. He was called in English, they called him Thomas Brown. And he was the king's advisor as far as finance and everything. And he left Sicily because at the time Muslims were beginning to be persecuted by a king called William the Bad. So he found tolerance and respect here by the English king, and he became his confidant and so on, and he lived and died in England. And as soon as he came from Sicily, the exchequer developed in England. It is not an English invention, as some history might say, because it didn't happen before. It happened precisely when this man came here. So it's another, you see, whenever historians try to confuse you, because they will try, you just look, I mean, history, Byzantine, you can piece it. I mean, you just need patience. And then you find everything has a link, and you can, especially if you look at it from different angles, then you can prove the connections. Now, you take another link, Spain. When did European universities rise? When did scientific growth? It rose, please, sorry, here I need some help from somebody who can do this one, please. We don't want to lose Spain. Yeah. I think it's been done. Nothing happened here, I can tell you. Yeah. Barakallah. Yeah. So if we take here Spain, there is a place called Toledo. It's not on this map, somewhere here. Toledo used to be dwelt by one of the most sophisticated Muslim dynasties who had a lot of scientific learning. But the Christians took it in 1085, towards the end of the 11th century. And when the Christian armies came in, and they were also accompanied by bishops and priests and so on, and they knew the value of scientific learning, Muslims. They destroyed the Qur'ans and things and so on, but they kept the medicine, the astronomy, the chemistry and so on. And in Toledo here, Toledo became the capital of learning in the West. Every scholar from everywhere, from England, Italy, France, Germany, came to Toledo. And there what they did, they translated hundreds of books from Arabic into Latin. And it was these books by Al-Razi, Ibn Sina, Al-Khawarizmi, Ibn al-Haytham, Zahrawi and so on, that constituted the foundation of Western learning. This was the biggest transfer of knowledge in history. And one translator alone, called Gerard of Cremona, translated 82 books from Arabic. In fact, a story about him, when he was about to die, he was crying. And people said to him, I mean, you are a devout Christian, you shouldn't fear death and meeting the Lord and so on. And he said, no, I'm not fearing death. He said, I'm crying because I'm leaving all these beautiful books behind me. You see, there is here an English scholar called Daniel of Morlaix from near Norwich. His master sent him to France. He said, well, what am I going to do in France? I'm wasting my time. He said, I only find, he called them donkeys, the scholars here. He said, no, I'm going to Toledo where science really is. And he himself, Daniel of Morlaix, is the person behind the University of Oxford, because he took some manuscripts, and those manuscripts formed the foundation of the first English university, Oxford. Later on, the English also acquired knowledge from Salerno, Montpellier, and so on and so forth. But anyway, the big translation effort here led to one thing, to the foundation of the Western universities. The Western universities, like everything else, didn't take place before. They happened precisely after translations from Arabic took place. You can again check it historically. So if you find another thing, another development of castles. We take here England or Wales. You look at the beautiful castles that are in England and Wales. Say if you go to Wales now, Carnarvon and Conwy and so on, and you find again these castles, these huge castles, they happened precisely when the English king Edward went here on the Crusades. When he saw the Muslim construction technique and so on, castles and so on, he brought, even it is said that many Muslim architects were also taken prisoners, not just to England, everywhere. There is a great English scholar called Harvey, if you read him, he explains this wonderfully well, how architecture developed thanks to Islamic influence. And so he saw in Acre, in modern Palestine here, Akka, and he saw these castles, huge, beautiful constructions, and he rebuilt them here. You find them, what you find in Carnarvon, in Conwy, in North Wales, precisely copied from Acre here. And everywhere else, all the castles. If you look at development of business techniques, farming, and so on, again, they developed when the Crusaders came to Syria and Palestine, and they discovered how sophisticated Syrian and Palestine business practices and so on. And they took these practices, including the use of the check, contracts, business associations, and so on. All these ideas were taken from here, mainly from here, also based from North Africa, but mainly from here to Europe. So you find, again, when did other techniques develop, such as textile production, glass production, that I was talking about earlier on. It's again because they discovered here in Syria and Palestine the techniques of glass making. And again, the glass industry and the industries in Europe didn't develop before, they developed precisely after the movement, and you can again follow them. It's a long history, we can talk about it, how these various families, you can even find, when you research, that a family based here, because there were lots of Christian families, Western, who came here during the Crusades, you find the same family developing the industry here afterwards. You can even find the family name, except that they developed it here first, and then say a century later, there. This is how it happens, everything. So if we again, we take another development, mathematical knowledge. We talked about earlier on that Sylvester. If we talk about one of the famous mathematicians you know, Fibonacci, he wrote the first book on mathematics that became the foundation of Western mathematics. Where did it happen? Because Fibonacci came and studied here in Béjaïa, in Algeria. And here, why he came to study in Algeria? Because his father was a consul, and he saw how the Muslims there calculated quickly and very easily. And so he said, I'm going to send my son to learn here. And so when his son came to learn here, after he went back to Italy, he wrote his Liber Abaci, and his Liber Abaci became the foundation of modern mathematics. Even the models he follow precisely Muslim models. He follows Al-Khwarizmi. He bases his mathematics on business, the same as the Muslims did. Why the Muslims? Is because one brother earlier on opened the session, he was talking about reflecting the needs of society. Al-Khwarizmi wrote his book to answer the needs of society, of the faith and business and so on. And that's how he wrote his book. He didn't write it because Muslims were very practical. So Fibonacci did the same. And then his book became the foundation of modern mathematics. When did modern mathematics in Europe develop? Precisely after Fibonacci, precisely after he came to Béjaïa and went back. So we can go on and go on, but I just would like to finish on this time thing. Say earlier, I would like to move to some later development. I can talk to you about business, arts, architecture. We can spend the whole night about this influence and how it worked. It's a fascinating subject once you get into it and you like it. It's endless. So take here about the influence of Turkey, for instance. Many aspects that we have today in the modern world came from Turkey because the Ottomans at the time, they were the most powerful nation in the 16th century in particular. And Europeans used to go to the Ottoman world, and there they acquired all sorts of knowledge. And here again, we find once they came here, they went back there, and you have these developments, whether it is in gardens, in the introduction of flowers, or into the introduction of concepts such as tolerance, accepting minorities, living with minorities, whether Catholics and Protestants. These things in Europe, they used, Catholics and Protestants used to slaughter each other until they went to Turkey and discovered skills, engineering, and so on and so forth. If we take some further development in the 18th century, I think here you have got a strong scientific tradition. Rockets, for instance. I personally discovered this only the last 2 years or something. Is when the English went to India, they fought a great Muslim general called Tipu Sultan. And Tipu Sultan and his father, Hyder Ali, were the first to use rockets to fight the English. Rockets as we know them today, the missiles. Tipu Sultan and his father Hyder Ali were the first two techniques. They used to throw cavalry here, throwing rockets, and then Hyder Ali organizing his army, then his son attacking the British front. And he was the biggest foe that the British wanted to the conquest of India. So they discovered that in India, they were astounded by that, by this weapon that they later on carried it to America. The English fought the American patriots in the War of Independence with rockets they had taken from India. You see, 10 years ago. Again, it's another scientific development that didn't happen before. It precisely happened once contact was made with another. So if we go through the centuries, from the early centuries until the 18th century, and even later in architecture and so on, you find that every development took place after contact was made with Islam. Finally, if you want also to look at the Islamic influence, you look at the substance. All the things we describe, whether in architecture, in medicine, in surgery, and so on, if you study them carefully, you find they are all based on Islamic precedents. You look at the language, many sciences have inherited, most of us don't know this, but many scientific words come precisely from the Muslim world. You find surgery was based on the surgery of a Zahrawi. You can check a Zahrawi, who wrote in the 11th century, and then you check European surgeons that followed him based on him. You look at mathematics, the same. You look at hospitals, the same. You look at architecture, the Gothic style, which is the foundation of modern Western architecture, is based precisely on an Islamic invention. Again, if you read Harvey, and another scholar, I forgot his name, they made a wonderful study, and they showed again, in fact, on the Gothic style, which is the foundation of Western architecture, just to tell you this, like the numerals, like baths. At the beginning, when they were imported from the Muslim world to take a bath, or to use the numerals, or to build with the Gothic style, and many other things, because there was this hatred of anything Islamic, they were associated with the devil and the Saracen enemy. But later on, when they were discovered great things, to take a bath is a great thing, to use 1, 2, 3 is very scientific, when you build with the Gothic is, that's how you do it. Then they say, no, they are not Muslims. And then they took them away. You see, and you find this repeated in many, many sciences and many other aspects. But finally, I would like to finish. I mean, this is here conclusion from me. We could go on, I mean, this is a vast subject. I mean, any person can spend years on it and this and this. And this is where there is a need for other Muslim scholars to look. Because, of course, we cannot always, Western scholars have done, some of them have done great work, as we see, and we benefit a lot from them. But I think the onus is also on Muslims to do their bit as well, and to trying to explain their heritage, at least devoted some attention. Because if they don't do it, they can't expect all the others to always sacrifice their time and their energies and finance to do it for them. Unfortunately, we seem as Muslims waiting for that to happen. Assalamu alaikum.
Thank you. Thank you, Salahuddin, for a very fascinating talk and talk about linkages. It's not surprisingly, obviously, since the map's still here. I mean, all faiths we talk about actually all started in a city here in the south of Iraq called Ur, which is the birthplace of Abraham, who is the father of the kind father and the father of all the faiths, or the three major religions we know today. But talking about linkages, obviously, what this is telling us really, there is nothing new under the sun. But basically what happened, the center of activity had moved from one place to the other, and that's something, I mean, obviously positive, because knowledge has to evolve in a way, in a incremental way or the other, to get us to where we are now. And again, talking about linkages, and in particular with Sicily, and maybe a little surprise for some of you, or maybe some of you never heard of this, but actually our queen, the Queen of the United Kingdom, is descendant of Prophet Muhammad. And if anyone interested in this, all you need just to Google the royal family and Islam, and you find actually that the blood of Prophet Muhammad runs in the vein of the Queen, and that's how we are close to each other. So this is really can add one thing and emphasize one point, that no matter where the center of activity, we have really to take the opportunity seriously, reflect positively, and make the most of it for the benefit of society and the world. It gives me again a pleasure to introduce our third speaker for this evening, Salim Aidus. Salim is a senior scholar at the Foundation for Science, Technology and Civilization. In 1986, he attended Istanbul University History Department. His graduate work, in the graduate work at the same university, in the History of Science Department, he specialized in the history of the Ottoman science and technology. He published many books and articles in the field. He also attended many national and international symposium and original papers. Again, once I would like to introduce our third speaker for this evening talks, Dr. Salim Aidus. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Professor Abdul Sharif, for your introduction. Assalamu alaikum, ladies and gentlemen. I will talk about Ottoman contribution on science and technology to the modern civilization tonight, inshallah. And I don't know how many people doesn't know about Ottomans. Have you heard before or not? Ottomans, how can I continue? This one. So this is the Ottoman state map established end of the 13th century until 1923 in 3 continents. It was a very large area, and 600 years, 6 centuries. It is a very long time actually, and long, very vast area. And my colleague Dr. Salah mentioned about Muslim contribution before Ottomans. And 13th century, actually, the decline of the Islamic civilization, because from the east, the Mongols came and destroyed all Middle East and this area, and also this area. And at the same time, same centuries, 12th and 13th centuries, Crusaders came from the west, and they destroyed Anatolia and again Egypt and this area of Muslim civilization. And later centuries, the Spain Muslim Andalus civilization destroyed by Spanish armies. End of the 13th century, Ottomans, they established in this city around Iznik or Nicaea by the first Ottoman Sultan Osman Bey or Osman Gazi. And before I start, I can't mention all Ottoman contribution to modern science and civilization. It is too much and it will take a very long time. In 2005, there was a big debate and big problem between Turkey and European Union. And at that time, the Turkey application to the European Union was about to reject by Europeans. And it was Monday, they were going to decide whether to continue or not. And 2 days before, on Saturday, the independent newspaper, this is the first cover page of the independent newspaper, they were asking, so what have the Turks ever done for us, for European civilization? And under 6 topics they were answering. First, multiculturalism. It says, although rulers became Muslim, Ottoman sultans were Muslim, the Ottoman state was home to Christians, Jewish people and Buddhists coexisting in peace and prosperity with Muslims from Anatolia to Algeria. Centuries before the war, multiculturalism was thought of. If you go to Istanbul today, in many places you will see the mosque, church and synagogue all together. Even sometimes they are sharing their gardens. They were in peace and in tolerance. They lived very long centuries. And the second topic was the trade, and it says, sitting astride the most strategic crossroads in Asia, the Ottomans with their ships and caravans achieved domination of the Silk Road and taught the West everything it knew about the trade before the advent of ocean-going ships. The third topic was the politics, and they say, the pioneers of the disciplined bureaucracy and inventors of the standing army, they aided their enemies and seduced the Christian peasants meant to fight them, who could see a better life under the Ottomans. Under this topic also I can add some things. Some people use Ottoman Empire instead of the state. Ottomans, they never used the word empire for themselves. They always say Ottoman Devlet-i Aliye, High Ottoman State. And the reason Ottomans, they never conquered other people's lands just for money or for land or to get a benefit for themselves. Many people, even in European, especially in European people, they, when they realize Ottomans is much better than other people, they invite Ottomans to conquer their lands, to protect themselves. Just last year, the president of Hungary, he said that we were under the Ottoman administration for 150 years, and we are very lucky, because if not, the Habsburg, the West neighbors, were going to destroy their nation. And thanks to Ottomans, we stayed alive, and we are very grateful to the Ottomans. The Hungarian president said last year. And also Arab lands also were going to occupy by Spanish or Portuguese armies, and they were going to destroy, and then Ottomans saved Arab lands as well. The fourth topic is the art. Turkey has brought us some of the finest works from calligraphy and metal work to illuminate manuscripts and glasses, and also the many other art subjects, and marbling of the papers as well. The fifth one, military know-how, known as the storm on horseback. The heirs to Genghis Khan brought their cavalry sweeping across the plains of Anatolia into the Balkans and beyond. Their enemies only matched them with the advent of sea power and by copying their techniques. Also, the first standing army, Janissaries, was invented by Ottomans very early in the beginning of the 14th century. And also many different military techniques was taught by Ottomans to the world. The last topic was the style. The newspaper says they sat on divans on beautiful carpets, smoking shishas, nargiles, and eating lokum, or Turkish delight. Their tight bodies were steamed back to the harmony in ornate bath. Ottoman luxury was a fascinating scandal to the hardy Puritans of Northern Europe. Now we have learned to lounge, and Oriental comforts are part of our lives, the independent newspaper says. And at the end of the page it says, this is the answer of the question why Europe should embrace its Muslim neighbor Turks. Actually, there are many other reasons, not only these 6 topics, European nations borrowed from Ottomans, from Turkish nations, because Turkish nation, not only today Turkey, as you see from the map, many, the middle of the Europe until Vienna, and all Balkan Peninsula, all North Africa. Actually, this map is not show all Ottoman lands. Most of the Ottoman lands was going to the middle of the North Africa. And this map doesn't show all Saudi Arabia and some part of the Iran, and also many part of the, today Russia. In this topic, I will mention Ottoman science will be used to describe the scientific and educational activities that happened throughout the Ottoman period in the territories where the state extended. Scientific activities in the Ottoman state emerged and developed in Anatolian cities from the scientific legacy and institution of the pre-Ottoman Seljuk period, and benefited from the activities of the scholars who came from Egypt, Syria, Iran, and Turkestan. That is from the substantial scientific and cultural centers of the time. Before the Ottomans, in the Anatolia, there were Seljuk state, which is one of the biggest Turkish state again. And also before Ottomans, there were other Muslim states in this area, Abbasids and Emevis. Ottomans borrowed many scientific institutions. For example, the madrasas, the first madrasas was set up by Nizam al-Mulk in 10th century. They borrowed all the system and many scholars as well. Alongside the old centers of Islamic civilization, new centers such as Bursa, Istanbul, Edirne, and some here, Skopje, Sarajevo, flourished during the Ottoman period. During the classical period, in 15th and 16th centuries, Ottoman scientists and scholars showed remarkable success in developing science and were able to produce many works in various branches. First of all, I will mention Ottoman contribution on the scientific institutions such as madrasas, which is equal to the university today, very high-level education. Madrasas was the core source of the science and education and the most important institution of learning in the Ottoman state. The Ottoman madrasas continued their activities from the establishment of the state until approximately the turn of the 20th century. The first madrasa established in 1331, which is very early. The Ottoman state founded in 1300. After 30 years, they founded a first madrasa by the Orhan Bey, the second Ottoman Sultan. The second Ottoman Sultan, all the madrasas had the vakıfs, their own income, supporting their activities. They never get any money from the government. They're all independent, in terms of financial administration, also in terms of education. Shortly after Mehmet II conquered Istanbul, he built the Fatih Külliye or Fatih Complex. This is the Fatih Complex, known as the Sahn-ı Saman Medreses, 8 court colleges, which comprise a mosque located in the middle, as well as colleges, a hospital, a mektep or elementary school, a public kitchen, and other buildings located around the mosque. This shape of the complex never happened before Ottomans, before Mehmet II. First time the mosque in the center, different type of colleges, madrasas around the mosque, and one is a library. There was a hospital here, is destroyed today, and other madrasas around the building. Ottoman science developed. It set an example for similar structures built by the Sultan's successors and high-ranking members of the ruling class. Ottoman science developed owing to the personal interest of Muhammad II and the educational institution that he established after the conquest of Istanbul. Mehmet also encouraged the scholars of his time to produce works in their special field. Foreign experts from all over the world were also welcomed into the state and made contribution to the special fields. For example, Ali Kuşçu from Samarkand came to Istanbul and Muhammad II appointed him as the head of the all madrasas, and he also set up the madrasa curriculum of Ottomans. And also Muhammad II paid him 200 akçes per day. It is very high salary for a scholar at that time. After Mehmet complex, the establishment of the Süleymaniye Külliye, Süleymaniye complex again, by Süleyman the Magnificent in the 16th century marked the final stage in the development of the madrasa system where, besides the conventional madrasas, a specialized one called Darut Tıp or medical college was founded. Thus, for the first time in the history, in addition to the shifahanes or hospitals, an independent institution was established to provide medical education. This is the Süleymaniye Mosque again in Istanbul, and again around the mosque there are madrasas, but this time, the first time, the medical madrasa, this area, founded by Süleyman I by himself, by his own order. And beside the madrasas, again, tabhane, public kitchen, hospital, library, and Darul Hadis madrasas was established. The Süleymaniye Medical School, this is the medical school, was the first formal teaching institution for Ottoman medicine. Unlike the previous traditional medical schools, which were just component of hospitals, Süleymaniye was the first medical school to have a deed of trust that mentioned in character as an institution for medical learning. It was also the first institution to be built next to Dar al-Shifa, next to hospital. This is also hospital, and this is medical madrasa, and there is only one street between them. The students taking theoretical lessons in medical madrasa and medical practical application in the hospital. In history, this is the first time happened by Ottomans in 1557, middle of the 16th century. Süleyman the Magnificent himself ordered the establishment of a medical madrasa in his complex to educate highly skilled physicians for the needs of both the public and his own army. The medical madrasa and the Dar al-Shifa buildings were built side by side to provide both a medical education and a public health service. This is very similar to contemporary university hospital. The idea of two buildings together, a medical madrasa and the Dar al-Shifa, a hospital, is considered superior in application and was ahead of its time. After a lesson in medical theory, the medical students would go to Dar al-Shifa straight away to put into practice what he learned in the Dar al-Tıp. Therefore, the Süleymaniye Medical School and Dar al-Shifa have a very important place in the history of medical education and its application to the hospitals. And besides this institution, music was used in the treatment of mentally ill patients who were being burned or tortured at that time in Europe at this century. In addition, the medical treatment was free in hospital. This is also another külliye or complex in Edirne, again in the middle, the mosque and madrasa's left side, and the medical madrasa right side, and also this madrasa, particularly musical treatment was applied by the physicians. And in the middle Dark Ages time, many of them may be aware, in Europe, mental illness people were burned or they were sent away from city. And in the field of medicine, the works of Sabuncuoğlu Şerafettin in the middle of the 15th century again were particularly important. The first book on surgery that he wrote in Turkish entitled Cerrahetül Haniye, Treatise on the Surgery of the Sultans, comprises the translation of Abul Qasim al-Zahrawi Tasrif, a self-contained handbook of the medical arts, and the 3 sections that he himself wrote. This work is renowned in the history of Islamic medicine in that it illustrates surgical operation with miniatures for the first time. The second subject on the medical history, the vaccination. The Anatolian Ottoman Turks knew about the methods of vaccination. They called vaccination aşı in Turkish, of engrafting, and they had inherited it from older Turkic tribes. The Turks had discovered that if they inoculated their children with cowpox taken from the breast of the cattle, they would not develop smallpox. This kind of vaccination and other forms of variolation were introduced into England by Lady Mary Montagu, a famous English letter writer and wife of the English ambassador at Istanbul between 1716 and 1718. She came across the Turkish methods of vaccination and became greatly interested in smallpox inoculation after consenting to have her son inoculated by the embassy surgeon Charles Maitland. Whilst in Istanbul, Lady Montagu sent a series of letters to England in which she described the process in detail. The next subject is architecture, which is one of the most famous architecture, Mimar Sinan, and he made 477 buildings, including the Selimiye Mosque in Edirne, which has the tallest earthquake-defined minarets in Turkey. This is the interior of Selimiye Mosque in Edirne, and the minarets, as you see, tallest and thinnest minarets in Turkey, and more than 400 years still standing. Many very strong earthquakes happened in this area. Nothing happened in this mosque. The Selimiye Mosque in Edirne possessed the highest earthquake-defining minarets in the whole of Turkey. It is the work of master architect Sinan, who was the architect for the Ottoman state. He designed and built a staggering 477 buildings during his long career in the service of 3 sultans in Turkey during the 15th century, acknowledged the importance of harmony between architecture and landscape, a concept which did not surface in Europe until the 16th century. His Turkish designs revolutionized the dome, along with the greater height and size and outstanding advance in civil engineering, which later became trademark. As you see, many windows in the mosque and an amazing dome allowed the light in the mosque. His innovative designs, earthquake resistance, environmental friendly, minimum consumption, and acoustic engineering. And this is the Süleymaniye Mosque. The third topic, the second topic, environmental friendly, is important. As you see the Süleymaniye Mosque, there are many candles. Today, actually, they reduced the number of the candles because of the electricity. They don't need any more candles. But in the 15th, 16th centuries, there were 4,000 or 5,000 candles. Same time they are lightening. Can you imagine how smoke will affect the walls of the mosque, especially the dome? But Sinan found system, the wind came across the windows through the small hole and going around the mosque, and then goes underneath of this is the main gate. Just top of the main gate, there are 4 holes. The smoke goes into this room, smoke room, and there is a small room above this gate, and they collect all smoke there, and then they use this smoke for as a ink, which is the most high quality ink at that time. And this is also another picture of Selimiye Mosque. Now, Süleyman the Magnificent was the supporter of the Sinan architecture because of his long-term rulership. 46 years he was sultan, almost half century, and he was one of the most strong Ottoman sultan. In the field of astronomy, besides medicine, astronomical studies were improved in the Islamic civilization. These studies started in the very early days. Observation of the sun and the moon and the calculation of the prayer times required precise calculations. The observatory was one of the most highly developed institutions of science and learning in Islam, and one of the high watermarks of the Muslim civilization. In Ottoman state, the last and the third biggest observatory founded by Taqiyuddin Razid in the 1570s by the support of Sultan Murad III, and this observatory founded the European side of Istanbul, and unfortunately it was lasted only less than 10 years. But during the 10 years, Taqiyuddin made many observational instruments, and also he invented some new astronomical instruments like almondar sphere and Zat al-Avtar and sextant, and also a mechanical clock, which is the first time an astronomer used for observational requirement. And this is one of the most important inventions of Ottomans. Taqiyuddin Razid also wrote many books on astronomy, mathematics, medicine, and physics, lights. And one of his books was the El-Turukus Siniye fi Alat Ruhani, about automatic machines. And he developed and used gravity and spring-driven mechanical clocks and invented a 6-cylinder pump, as you see, for raising water in a continuous manner. In addition, he wrote more than 30 books in mathematics, astronomy, mechanics, and medicine. At that time, this invention is very important because he has a 6-cylinder. Today, most of the cars has 4, 6, or 8 cylinders. The idea most probably comes from Taqiyuddin Razid. And the next subject is geography, and also most precise maps drawn by Muslims. And this is the most famous one. Piri Reis map was presented to Sultan Selim I in 1513. This is the first time south of America and some part of North America and east of Africa shown in this article. And the most important things, some part of this map of Piri Reis, for example, it shows clearly Antarctica, which was only supposedly discovered or rediscovered in 1820, 307 years after the map was drawn. Also shown on the map the Andes Mountains of the South America, which were again first seen by Spaniards in 1527, 14 years after the map of production. Some scholars say no one can make this high quality map without taking a photo from a satellite. The next map is Ali Majar Reis map in 1567. Again, you see very close to today's map when you compare the modern world map with Ali Majar Reis. You can see how he was successful, and Turks how they were good on map making. Perhaps the most staggering map of the world is the of Ali Majar race in 1567, which depicts the world in such fine detail that it resembles maps of modern days, and we can almost wonder if Ali Majar race was looking at the Earth from the moon. And the last one, first flight in history after Abbas bin Firnas happened in Istanbul. Hazarfan Ahmet Çelebi, he made some wings, and he flight from Galata Tower, which is the European side of Istanbul, and he landed the Asian side of Istanbul successfully, not broken any part of his bones. And the last example of Ottoman science and technology, rocketman Lagari Hasan Çelebi, the night Ottoman Sultan Murat Han's daughter in 1633, the previous one 1638, same time, there are 5 years big difference between them. In year 1633, Kaya Sultan was born, and there was an infant ceremony. Lagari Hasan had invented a 7-winged rocket using 50 okka or 63 kg of gunpowder paste. In Sarayburnu, this is the Sarayburnu, just next to sea. He mounted the rocket before the emperor, before the sultan. His students lit the wick. Lagari said, "Oh my sultan, be blessed. I'm going to talk to Jesus Christ." And he ascended praying. He lighted the rockets he took with him, illuminating the surface of the sea. When the big rocket ran out of gunpowder, he splashed into the sea while landing. Thereon, he swam and came before the sultan. He kissed the ground and joked, "Oh my sultan, Jesus Christ sent his regards to you as well." He was granted a sack of silver coins and was enrolled a cavalry soldier with 70 silver coins for his salary. As a conclusion, Ottoman contribution to the science and technology during the 600 years rule over a huge domain are beyond measure. The above is merely a brief outline of some of the Ottoman scientific activities and related institutions, was brought about a revival of culture, science and learning in civilization throughout the world. Thank you very much for your
Thank you, Dr. Salam. Our last noted speaker, Dr. Subhi Al-Azzawi, architect and independent scholar researching into architecture and culture, as well as the climate and the environment. Subhi is very passionate about his work on architect. It's not surprisingly, he was brought up in Baghdad, born in Baghdad, and brought up to a master builder, what we call in Arabic Ma'mari. Usta Ma'mari. I think the Usta is not Arabic word, isn't it? Usta. Farsi, yes. Usta, yes. So really, the love to architect ran in his blood. Subhi received education here in the UK in architecture and at the School of Architectural Association in London between 62 and 68. And we must know the secrets of keeping young. Then he went on to do a PhD between 1969 and 73, and producing pioneering work for which he was exempt from the Viber voice examination, but we're not going to exempt him tonight from telling us about his fascinating journey and love and passion to Islamic architecture. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
This one.
So, could you operate the slides for me, please? Could you do number 2 first?
Yeah.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Can you hear me well? Yes. I usually like to get very close to my slides. I should like to thank the Islamic Society at the University of Surrey for their kind invitation for me. It is a pleasure and honor to talk to you about a subject which I have lived with for over 40 years. I should also like to thank Professor Adil Sharif for chairing this session and for introducing me. Could I have the first one? That's it. I shall be talking about the environmental aesthetics because quite a lot of architects, especially in Europe, they have always been talking about the visual aesthetics. And I believe that Islamic architecture not only has the visual aesthetics, it has a further aesthetic, and that is the environmental. And that is how you feel inside the building in terms of comfort. And I consider that to be the fifth dimension of Islamic architecture, and it is not available in European architecture or anywhere in the world. And I shall show you this and prove it scientifically. I shall be talking mainly about the courtyard houses of Baghdad. This is because I had actually carried out fieldwork scientific measurements in there, and therefore I shall be talking about the logical aspects to start with, and then I shall prove it to you scientifically, I hope. This is what is known as Diwan Khana, which is the family reception house for well-to-do families. It's basically, the concept is that of a courtyard open to the sky, around which all the habitable rooms and spaces are grouped. The courtyard provides the habitable room and spaces with sunlight, then light, visual contact between them, natural ventilation, cross-ventilation, as well as contact with the weather and a view of the sky above. We normally call it Abu Khaymt al-Zarga, the man with the blue tent, meaning Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And therefore you have always got this view here. Now, because the courtyard is an open space, therefore all the habitable rooms and spaces are actually looking, while they are looking inwards, it means all the doors and windows can be looking inwards. And therefore, all the walls around it, on 3 sides, and it could be 4 sides, can be made into blank walls. And if they are blank walls, that means other houses can be stacked next to them, on either side, back, and even at the front. And the beauty of the courtyard is that it has 4 orientations. You can orientate your habitable rooms and spaces, not according to geographic, but according to the sun and to the wind. And therefore, your habitable rooms, which need the warmth in winter, they are facing south, or southeast, or southwest, depends on the orientation. And the habitable room and spaces, which need prevailing wind in order to cool you in summer, they are oriented towards the prevailing wind, which in Baghdad comes from the northwest, or sometimes even from the west itself. And therefore, I am not going to talk about the house as a concept in Islamic architecture, because that is a completely different lecture, which I call the courtyard house as a true reflection in architecture of an Arab and a Muslim way of life, taking into consideration the religious as well as the social aspect. That is not the lecture for tonight. Tonight is about science. And therefore, just to say in here, could I have the lights? Yeah. Even dimmer if I may, because then when the pictures come, it will be very nice. And this is for Islamic reason, really. You've got the bent entrance. You have 290 degrees in order to make sure that the privacy of the courtyard is maintained in here. And in here, what we have the portico, which is like covered space, which you use in summer. And when the sun, even at midday, almost filling up that, you can still have a shelter in there. Now, each house has got a subterranean room where the people would spend their summer afternoon siesta from around midday until about 4 o'clock. And this would be about 1.5 meters to 2.5 meters below the level of the courtyard itself. So you actually come down in here, and as you could see, you could still have two domes, the arches, etc. Now, because these they become party walls, it means that, and they don't receive any sun, therefore they are cool, and as a result, they actually make gaps in between called bad gear, earth scoop, where the wind comes through from the roof terrace into here and opens, and therefore I shall explain how it is actually done. In addition to that, they may have a pit in the ground where it is cooler because of the mass of the ground itself. And in here, when you open it up, as we will see, they have actually a platform in there in the form of a grid, and this is where they would keep the food left over from the previous night, or watermelons, etc., in order to cool it. So you have really your fridge in here as well. Next to the next one, I mean. Yeah. And on the first floor, you could see the opening of the courtyard and the mamsha, the access balcony, and the two reception rooms, and the tarma again. Now this house, which it's very close to the Kadmiya Holy Shrine. It is by the Istarabadi, a family which moved into Baghdad from Iran in about 1850, and they built the house in there. Now, can I draw your attention, brothers and sisters, in here? 1850, 1875. This house has got double glazing. These and these in here. Okay? And I'll show you what it is. And in order actually to make sure that the aesthetic is very nice, they've got all the windows in here, and you come through the door like that, and therefore you don't interrupt it, in order to maintain that one as well. Because once you open a door in here, we divide the room into two halves. And in there, the person who would receive the guest would be sitting here, and then they come in and they say Salaam Alaikum, and the people around them in here. And then you can bring tea and coffee from here as well. And of course, you open the door in here, therefore this is not exposed to the element because it is covered. And they take their shoes off in here and they go in. It also means that these areas are actually very dark because they are in the corner, and therefore you utilize these. And you make these single story, and while this is double height, and therefore you can have extra rooms above them. And these are called kafishkan. In other words, supervising rooms in there, and they usually are kept either for grandfather when he stopped working, or for the children. And this is the mezzanine level itself. Next. I might better move very quickly. This is a vertical section, and you could see the courtyard in here with the tarma in here, and another one there. And then this is the Neem Sardab, Sard Ab, cold water, Neem half, as you will see later on. And therefore this is the air scoop. Unfortunately, this is the other half is here. The prevailing wind comes down there, it comes into here and out into there. And the people would sleep on the floor in here in summer. And I'll show you later on, but may I mention it now, that when the temperature here in the shade is 50 degrees, in here it is 30, without any air conditioning whatsoever. And the roof terrace is used to sleep on from mid-May until mid-October, because there the body as well as the structure loses heat to the sky by outgoing radiation. And therefore about 4 o'clock in the morning you start shivering, and you always have an eiderdown or a blanket to cover yourself. The house is basically two houses in one. That's a separate lecture, but I'll show you. You've got a summer house, which is used from mid-May until mid-October, and you've got a winter house, which is mainly of timber, and that is of solid brick, and used in summer, in winter. And the reason for this is that in summer, the angle of the sun is very steep, and therefore you want to have the floor to ceiling height very low, 3 meters, in order to prevent the sun from penetrating. On the first floor, the angle of the sun is shallower, and therefore it would penetrate the windows here on either side. And it is made into 4.5 meters, and therefore it goes deeper into there. And because the structure is thin, and therefore it is heated, and then it re-radiates to the interior, and hence it warms it. Obviously, overnight it's cold, but you are in bed tucked away, so there is no problem. Next, please. That is the dome in there. It's called Araq Chin. Araq, sweat, Chin, Farsi, meaning collecting. And therefore, this is like this skull cap in here. And you could see in here the way that a square is changed from a square into an octagon and then into a circle. And that is an Islamic invention. The Europeans did not know how to build a dome over a square. And this is why you have in the St. Paul's and other places, the base of the dome is actually round. The Muslims managed to actually do it by converting, it's called a transitional zone, from a square into an octagon or into 16-sided and then into the dome itself. The 16-sided or the 8-sided is nearer to the circle itself. In here you would see probably people would think that this is where you would have your chandelier, etc. It isn't. This is the place where a banner would be hung down, and the banner would have a piece of timber at the bottom, and the servant would be sitting in the entrance hall, and he would pull it backwards and forwards in order to induce movement. And to me, I believe this is because the Arabs and the Muslims were seafarers. They used to have, when you have a boat, the wind actually goes onto the sail and pushes forward. In this concept, it's exactly the reverse. They move the sail in order to introduce movement in here. But not only that, every now and then, they would bring this banner down, soak it with water, take it up, and start the whole process. And therefore, you introduce what is known as evaporative cooling. And this was used during the reign of Harun al-Rashid, 9th century. And in fact, they said that because he wanted it cooler, they used to smash ice and put it on that banner. And it goes that way. Next, please. Yeah, and that's the corner itself. This is the vent entrance, and these are the double glazed windows. And this is what I call breeze transparent doors. This is where you go to the basement itself, the semi-basement. And as you could see in an Islamic house, the staircase is really very steep and very minor. It is purely functional, going from A to B. This is not the place as you find in 18th century Europe, where women come out like a theater and, showing their beautiful dresses, etc., etc. No. This is a functional aspect, and therefore it deserves to be minor. And that's another corner itself. Yeah, and you could see the mezzanine level. And of course, you've got the delik in Turkish, the amud, the column, which is really a tree trunk made into an octagon in plan, and then put up there, which gives you the perspective of going up. Because when it is going smaller, it means it is higher, and therefore it's expressive that way. And then they use the capital in here, which is really pieces of timber, which is what we call stalactite composition and construction, what is known as in Arabic as muqarnaq. Yeah? And because you've got a bigger beam in there, therefore they wanted to make the top of the column wider in order to receive that. Next, please. I better hurry up. There is it's 1850, 1875. Next. And this window as well, from the subterranean semi-basement. And if you want to increase the ventilation or you talk to someone, you open this window and you could do that. Next, please. And these are the main reception rooms, and this is the way you go and see them. And these are the double glazed windows and panels. And as you could see in here, This is perfect symmetry, and therefore there is no door to interrupt the symmetry and the visual aspects. So, you know, the Muslims were very careful about, you know, symmetry and how it looks, in addition to being double glazed in here as well. Next, please. And there is the other reception room and the mother of pearl as well in here. And all these are double glazed. Next. And this is the inside. So you could see the light comes through here, and these are patterned, decorated. Can we have the next one? And there is a reason for that. Because in here you get strong sunlight, you could actually get glare of intense quality, and it's very painful to the eye. Therefore, they use color glass in here in order to break it, and therefore they attenuate the light. So you have dark, slightly lighter, and very bright itself. And that is exactly the same thing what the English use in Georgian architecture, where you have shutters on the inside painted white at 45 degrees. That is the reason for it, so that the light bounces into the interior. It's exactly the same thing here. Next. Yeah, I think we've seen that before. And it does show you the majesty of the architecture itself and the symmetry and the whole thing. Next. Yeah, that's the other side, one facing each other. That's another house, just simply to show you the quality of double glazed again with a mother of pearl. Next. That was a very large house, about 300 square meters, because they needed that, and also because during Ramadan they used to actually have an imam to pray, and during Ashura as well. Now, quite a lot of people say the Muslims do that because they only can do it with large houses. This is a small house, 5.5 meters by 9 meters, 55 square meters. What does it have? It has a courtyard, it has an entrance, it has the tarma, and it has 2 rooms. It has a semi-basement, yeah, with the bad gears on the other side. And therefore, the master builder has given the same thing to the poor family as well as to the rich family itself. This is what I call the humanity of Islamic architecture. You treat the poor exactly the same way as the rich. The difference is that in the quality of the woodwork, etc., you use in the decoration. But in terms of human comfort, you've given them exactly the same thing. Next. And then, of course, you've got the access balcony and the 2 rooms. Usually one for the parents and the children, and then the adults in here. And then, of course, you've got also the roof terrace where you sleep. What happens in here, probably I shall explain it later on. Next, please. And that's a section itself. The timber house, the winter house, the summer house, and the summer house includes the roof terrace itself. And you could see the section of the alleyway, which is exactly like a ziggurat. It is wide enough for pedestrian to move along at ground floor, get slightly narrower in order to produce a bit of privacy, and you've got ventilation. And then it is very narrow at roof level in order to reduce the sunlight coming through into the alleyway, and therefore produce semi-sheltered environment outside. And these are the most popular spaces for people to move along outside. Next. And there it is. That's my brother in there. Sadly, the government have demolished these houses in '67 to build a civic center, believe it or not. Next, please. Yeah, and that's a section through it explaining it. I think I better hurry up. Next. Yeah, and that's again, it's a similar section, and these are actually ventilation. As you could see, there is actually no window on the ground floor, only the front door itself. And the front door is along one side of the elevation in order to preserve the privacy of the courtyard. And you don't normally have doors side by side in order to give privacy to the neighbors. And then, of course, you've got what we call Shanashir Shah Nashin, the seating of the king. Yes? and in this case, of course, it's the seating of the head of the family. Next. Yeah, and sometimes where you have the building plots at not right angles to the alleyway, you can actually do that with various doors, etc., on the ground floor. But on the first floor, you would correct that by making the room square or rectangles, and therefore you have beautiful architectural articulations, exactly mirroring the teeth of a saw itself. Next. Yeah, and this is another house in Kadmiyah. You've got the main rooms, and you know the corner rooms which I told you about, the Kashif Khan or Kabish Khan, Kabsh. It means the old sheep, but it actually means the head of the family as well, Jit. Yeah? And Khan is Makan, and therefore this is the place of the grandfather. Yeah? And then the reason these are like that is because in winter the family lives in here. So at night, if someone comes in and knocks on the door and they don't know who it is, they would open this window and then they recognize this, and then they would drop the key to the person itself and let him in. Or just simply pull and then the door would open. Next, please. Yeah, this is rather complicated, should be about 8. But basically you've got, where do I start? Well, this is the day, okay, you've got solar radiation coming in, and then you've got the prevailing wind coming into here, and then you've got obviously incoming radiation through the structure, and you also have outgoing radiation, and at night you could see the outgoing radiation from here, from the courtyard, and during the night, because the structure of the roof terrace loses so much heat, it gets so cold. And therefore the air next to it gets cold, because the air is not heated or cooled by just simply putting heat in it. It's by being in contact with a cold or hot surface. And therefore the air would actually descend into the courtyard and into here as well. And therefore, in the morning, the courtyard is nice, fresh, and cool. And you stay there until midday. Next, please. Yeah? Now, this is how the Ubad gear works. You've got the prevailing wind, which has a physical force. It hits the deflector in here, and then it comes down into the gap between within the party wall. And because it's got a physical force, and then, of course, it's slightly retarded because of the friction in here. But the nice thing about this friction is that it is friction with cold surfaces, and therefore it gets cooler. If it gets cooler, it's called denser. If it's denser, it drops down even further. And therefore it's cooled all the way down here. And what does it find? It finds a very nice sister in here. And that is a water jug made from earthenware, and it seeps through. You know, the water seeps through, and therefore the air is actually humidified as well. And the water is cool, and the air is cool, and the jar is cool. And then this is used for drinking, as well as evaporative cooling as well, and the people would be here. And of course this area is actually washed during the day, so that it evaporates as well. And at night, after sunset, this is showered with water, and after about an hour, it evaporates and it gets cooler, and then the beddings are spread on the floor or on the matting itself. And the same thing is with the courtyard. You know, تَنَظَّفُوا فَإِنَّ الْإِسْلَامَ نَظِيفٌ. Clean yourself, because Islam is clean. And cleanliness is godliness. And therefore every day the courtyard is actually washed before midday. And because it is paved with traditional porous paving brick, it absorbs the water like a sponge. And it suddenly, easily releases it to the air, and therefore it creates evaporative cooling. Next. Yeah. And this is the cooling pit I told you in the semi-subterranean room, and it's connected to an air scoop, and then it comes in here, and what we call breeze transparent door. It has no glass. And when you open it, this is what you find. It is 1 meter deep by 1 meter by 1 meter. And halfway up, you've got this grid in here. And then they could put the pots or watermelon, sweet melon, or cucumbers, etc. in here. And it's cooked. And sometimes, in these badgirs, they would actually come into ducts into the floor of the sardal. And every now and then you have this. And therefore, the air is never stagnant. And it's exactly like cooling ducts in modern buildings. 18 next, yeah. And sometimes, of course, in the past we used to have the Bedouins coming into Baghdad. And this is what is known as camel thorn. In fact, it is the concept of the filter in air conditioning systems. So you put this on the windows, you shower it with water, and then the air comes through. It's cooled and humidified. Yeah, and that's another courtyard itself. This is 1920 house, and you could see they have an orangery in here, Jannah or Junayna, Baqcha, yeah? And it gives you the shadow in summer. And of course the roof terrace you could see where you sleep overnight in here, and that's the first floor. That you could see the Tigris actually there. Next. Yeah, and there it is, on the first floor. And you see there is also an aesthetic in it. I mean, this one is like almost a tent, so you could actually enjoy yourself. This is the first floor, and this is the ground floor where you spend your summer in there. And of course, in winter, they would actually lose the leaves, and therefore you allow the sun to come down. And there it is. You've got also architectural, visual qualities in here in terms of the family room in winter. They allow the sun to penetrate through in order to warm it. Next. I'll hurry up. And then, of course, you've got the concept of light and shade. As the sun moves, the apparent movement of the sun around the courtyard, you get this beautiful scenery moving around the courtyard. Next. Why is this? Because we've got climate like this. The climate like this, instead of having, the usual, step ladder you find, I have actually drawn it as 18 months. And therefore, you've got the summer season and the winter season. And you could see in here this is an average, it's 43 degrees Celsius, and in here it's about 25 or so. So there is a difference of about 20 degrees centigrade as diurnal range itself, and you could use that one. And in winter you could see it's still between 7 and 15. Next, please. And this is what you actually sometimes get, in brochures in here. But this is really, the temperature goes like that. Yeah, and so you've got summer and you've got winter. And better than this is what I have shown you in the earliest. Next, please. And then exactly the same thing with the relative humidity. Now the relative humidity and temperature in Baghdad is like this. You've got the hump of a camel and the underside of his belly. Very high temperatures and very low humidity. As architects and designers, what we want to do is to flatten this and raise this up, so that you lower the relative the temperature and you increase the relative humidity. And you do that by design, by building materials, etc., etc. Next, please. And then you've got the windrows. Next. Now, so far I've talked about logic, but can we prove it scientifically? These are the instruments I took to Baghdad in 71, 72 for 2 years, and it was bought by UCL. They spent the entire annual budget for that year for me. Thermohydrographs to measure the temperature and the humidity over a period of 1 week. Globe thermometers for the mean temperature of the surfaces. Catter thermometer for the wind speed inside the room. Anemometers for the wind speed at roof level, and there are various maxima, minima, etc. Next, please, very quickly. This is just to show you, in case somebody says, oh, he didn't take them to Baghdad. This is the house I described to you before. Next, and another one there in the Sinaka area. Next, and again. Now, instruments do not really lie, do they? Because they are in control. So you could see the temperature in there on the roof is between 45 and 47, 48 degrees. maximum, and in here it's about 30 or so, 30 at dawn. And then you've got the relative humidity. But the interesting thing, look at this one, and look what's happening in the Neem Sirdab. You know, the semi-subterranean room, it's 30 degrees from there to there. And the relative humidity is between 30 and 40. This is the effect of the mass of the ground, what we call the thermal inertia. Next, please. And then the Americans did their experiment in 1923, 1925, to actually show that the comfort zone for people in the hot, dry climate is between 22 and 27. So what I did, I said, if the Americans have proved that one, can I prove it in our own architecture? You know, as applying retrospectively, so to speak. Next, please. Yeah, that's just to show you what, this is one day on the roof terrace only. So there are 7 days like this, and there is one like that for each room as well. And there are 6 like that. Anyway, so it is quite, yeah, next please. And now I've invented this graph, which is the house I've shown you. It is really what is known as the effective temperature. In other words, it is the temperature you feel by combining the temperature, the relative humidity, and the wind speed, in order to enable you to compare one house with the other. If you have 3 variables, it's very difficult to do that. So what we have is the roof, effective temperature of the roof, and then in the courtyard, because it is a very large courtyard, slightly higher, and there it is in the Neem Sirdab, in the sunny basement. And there you've got, this is 25, so you've got should be between 22 and 27, and this is exactly within the comfort zone. Now, how do people do it? You could see when it is very cold, when it is the temperature is very low, they are on the roof terrace. They are in the sunny basement. Yeah. And then, when the temperature is very high, they are in the sunny basement. When the temperature is very low, they are on the roof terrace itself. Next, please, I'll hurry up. That's 1800 BC. 1800 BC, Courtyard. 6th century BC, Babylon. I'm hurrying up. Next. Qasr al-Ukhayr. 775 for the uncle of the Mansour. The reason I'm showing this is not only that it actually consists of 4 houses. Can you see? Baghdad, for a house built in 1850, 1875, achieving thermal comfort conditions without any mechanical or electrical devices, then this would actually achieve even better, because this is 5 meters below the ground and it has only got small windows in there. Therefore, the Muslims have a climate where the people would congregate around the holy shrine, and therefore this is for the protection of the shrine as well as for blessing as well. And you could see it's mainly courtyard houses. Next, please. And that's the shrine of Abdul Qadir al-Gailani. And again, it's the courtyard houses. Unfortunately, nowadays what they've done in this, as well in Kadhimiya and Najaf and Karbala, they have actually demolished all the houses around it in order for His Excellency, the Prime Minister, or the President, to arrive by car. What nonsense. Instead of actually walking the distance, because there is a hadith Nabawi Sharif which says the longer you walk to the masjid, the more praises becomes to you, hasanat. And of course this is against the climatic concept, because this is the form of a hot, dry climate. In fact, the previous one, I actually put it in the United Nations book, which I edited and partly contributed. Can you show that? Oh, sorry. The previous one I said. Yeah. 1969, United Nations. And no such thing was... Next, please. I think you better go very quickly. This is my... Quickly again. Yeah. Can you just... It's just simply to show you the previous one, please. Showing you what you can actually do. In other words, we shouldn't just look at it as history, but in fact we can actually use it for the present as well as for the future. Next. Again, whether it's over the shop again. Yeah, again. I'm going to finish off with over car park. Again. This is really where an architect becomes more English than the English in terms of courtyards. Can we have the previous one, please? Yeah, you could see these are the Georgian courtyards of London. This is a scheme in London, 79. Next one, again, and again. The point is this: can we use these concepts of Baghdadi houses, Iraqi houses, and other Muslim houses in England, in Europe? And I said yes. How? Well, this is a scheme. I'm sorry, just 3 minutes and that's it.
No, I think this is a big question. You know, I've used those in Europe, and you're talking about new lecture. I think you've done wonderfully.
Can you just show the two slides to show the... Yeah, that's it. That's the building.
Yes.
In other words, it can be applied. Thank you very much indeed. Sorry, I've taken too much. But in here, you use the concept in reverse. This is a cold climate, that was a hot climate, and therefore you do the reverse.
I'm sure the Islamic Society will invite you again to talk about this. Thank you, Dr. Subhan Azzawi. You once again proved to us how your passion for Islamic architect and for your work is unmatched.
That is how you...
Because of time limit, and I'm sure most of you have been obviously here more than 2 hours, but again, I'm sure some of you has questions to our speakers. So if we aim to finish here by 9:30, we have just over 10 minutes. And I would like, if anyone has a question to our speakers, and the plan is actually we go 1 question per speaker. So anyone has any question to our first speaker, please?
My question actually is to all the speakers.
Okay.
I don't know if we have time for that. I don't think we have time for that. No, I think we have to have one.
No. I mean, sorry. I mean, question for all speakers now. Hello.
My question is, why isn't the world of Islam contributing as much today as it has done in the past? The question was, why isn't the world of Islam contributing as much as it did in the past today?
Yeah, okay.
Who would like to answer?
Yeah, anyone want to answer this question? I think our historian speaker, yes. I'm sure.
Yes. I think you see it's. Sorry, can I stand here? You can hear me.
Sure.
I think it will be very long to answer you precisely. I've thought about it personally. Other people thought about it before me. It's very long to answer, but simply, I don't think the Muslim world is as interested in sciences and learning and having the same optimism, the same self-belief as they had 10 centuries ago. I think the problem is with us. That's fundamentally the thing. The day, inshallah, when we have the same self-confidence, the same belief that we can do great things, and then we put an effort in it, and today you look at the way how much we read, how much we write, how much we are interested in events like these, that answers you. Muslims in the past used to produce millions of books in the Middle Ages. Sorry, just finish. They used to travel thousands of kilometers to attend a class and to listen to something scholarly. That's not the case. It's just a matter of attitude. We have other values today.
Yes, thank you. And I think really in 2 words, if common sense and logic is considered seriously in our societies, we make progress. Unfortunately, those are not considered. Anyone want to add to this question?
Yes, if I may.
Please, quickly.
It's really, in the past, we used to have educated rulers. I mean, if you think about Al-Ma'mun, those people were highly educated. Al-Ma'mun used to reside over the meetings of scholars in the House of Wisdom in Baghdad every week, and he used to argue with them. And what do you have nowadays? Mainly military officers, being the head of state, etc. And this is why people like Professor Adil Sharif is doing well in this country rather than in Iraq. Because sometimes they really don't appreciate that. Sometimes thinking is a very dangerous process, and they don't like people to think. That is the saddest thing.
Thank you. And I think there's a Quranic answer to this, is that when people change themselves, when people change themselves, then Allah will help them to make the bigger changes and the positive changes. And I don't see this sign happening. I'm very optimistic about the younger generation, but we still have the cultural barrier to make those leaps anymore. Question for, well, this is, we didn't give a chance actually to our first speaker. Do you want to answer this question?
I agree with the two brothers.
Okay.
But what I see today, it's really very disappointing, where in our countries, in our supposedly Muslim countries, we see people who are scientists put in something to do with languages or accountancy and far away from their labs and their place of research. And until that stops, I don't see any future to Islamic contribution. And it's as if something is happening to really deter any development, any scientific development or contribution, not only to Islam, but I see Islam as a human development and not only for a certain category of people, Muslims or Christian or Hindus. We're talking about Islam that worked for the entire community.
Absolutely.
Next question for our second speaker or any of the speakers? No? Well,
I would like to ask the audience,
yes.
what sort of inspirations have you got from tonight? Has it been useful? Is it inspiring? Is it going to actually push you into doing something in your own field? Yes. To compete with, the white indigenous population, etc. That the Muslims are not always backward. Yeah, because if I may, you mentioned in the Quran the first verse which revealed the revelation on the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, is اقرأ باسم ربك الذي خلق الإنسان من علق اقرأ وربك الأكرم الذي علم بالقلم. Therefore it's reading and writing. But there is another one which says وقل ربي زدني علما. My Lord, increase my knowledge. So Islam is all for science. And اطلبوا العلم ولو في الصين. Seek knowledge, even if we're in China. What it means is that the distance should not be a barrier, the language should not be a barrier, the ethnic and the other race should not be a barrier, and the fact they may be of a different religion should not be a barrier, because Islam is very open. And then it says, أنا مدينة العلم وعلي بابها. I am the city of knowledge and Ali is its gateway. It goes through. And then what does the Imam Ali say? He says, إذا مر بي يوم ولم أستفد يدا ولم أستفد علما فما ذاك من عمري. If a day passes by and I do not learn anything manually or intellectually, then I wouldn't consider that to be a day in my life.
Yes.
I mean, that is Islam, really. And I could go on, but thank you.
Thank you. Okay, we have hands now. The one in the back there, please.
Again, to anybody who can answer the question, something similar to the question that was asked before. I would like to know why the Islamic contribution to the science is not being mentioned today when we are studying similar, like, if you're studying something like architecture or something like that, why are they mentioning the Islamic contribution to the scientific world? Why is it not being mentioned in the Western world, or where are you from?
Our speakers like to answer again, our historian, or maybe Dr. Zohor, or
It's European.
but you did actually, you did it in the report.
I'll talk after.
Make a reference to this one.
Yeah, exactly. See, this is what I said. It's not there are most scholars, Westerners themselves, they mention it. The reason is, when the Muslim world was being colonized, Westerners presented Muslims as barbaric people, and therefore Europe was civilizing them. Even today, whenever there is an intervention in Muslim countries to bring us civilization and the like. And therefore, we Muslims are supposed not to know science, that we are always being civilized. And this is one of the reasons. The other reason is, you can only promote your heritage if you do it yourself. You cannot expect others to do it for you. The problem with Muslims is that we are going through decline, intellectual decline. And unfortunately, we also give very little interest to our heritage. And the problem comes from us. We cannot expect the others when we Muslims, then ourselves. I can guarantee you, I have been giving talks, I can guarantee you 99% of Muslims don't know about their own heritage. So why should you blame Westerners for not talking about it? The problem begins with us.
Thank you.
Barakallah.
Thanks so much. Thanks. Thank you.
I just have one. I just want to add one more thing. Before blaming the Westerners for hiding our culture or not showing it, just to give you a simple example, there are about 500 or 600 Arabic channels, and there is just about not more than 10 that talks about Islam, and the rest, they're all about singing, dancing, and other films. So that gives you an idea who wants to promote Islam and who wants to promote science.
Well, I'll give you a practical example on this. One of our colleagues here at the university, Professor Jim Khalil, presented one of the finest piece of work on Islam and science by the BBC. And I tried actually to talk to a number of Arabic TV channels, and nobody interested in the translation of the program, yet of the book. So it's not, but just really one before we ask Dr. Husni Hamouda to present our way of thanking our speakers. I just want to add one little thanks to the distinguished audience. When you are asked if any of today's lectures inspired you, I ask you another simple question. How much of what you do in any subject of study link or has direct link to your faith? When you think of it that way, you will find a source of inspiration. And may I ask Dr. Husni Hamouda to come and thank our speakers and present the gifts they have for them. So our first speaker, Dr. Zohor Idrisi.
Sister. This is Zamzam.
Yes.
Oh, thank you.
Dr. Salahuddin. Dr. Salim. And thank you very much. And this
invite everyone for future.
Can I put it in the box?
okay.
Yes.
This will conclude the event, and I'm sure Brother Yusuf would like to say something. Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
I'd just like to say, I want to say another big thank you to all of you for actually attending tonight, and you're all welcome to have food afterwards and ask any more questions to some of the students here as well, and really engage with us. Thank you ever so much for coming, and come to our other two talks that we've got tomorrow as well, and the day after. Thank you.